Right now, as we close out 2025, the entire world is holding its breath for a ceasefire. Diplomats in Washington, Brussels, and Moscow are trading papers, proposing 28-point plans, and drawing lines on napkins. But while the politicians talk about peace, the generals are staring at a single, terrifying strip of land that makes peace almost impossible. It isn't Kyiv. It isn't Crimea. It is a 50-kilometer chain of industrial cities in the Donbas that military experts call a fortress belt. Imagine a shield made of concrete, steel, and 11 years of preparation. This shield is the only thing standing between the Russian army and the open, indefensible plains of central Ukraine. For Vladimir Putin, this belt is the final prize of the Donbas campaign, a prize he is now demanding be handed over voluntarily before he signs any peace deal. For Ukraine, abandoning it would be suicide. This is the story of the most dangerous deadlock in modern Europe. We are looking at a stalemate not caused by a lack of ammunition, but by a poison pill condition in the negotiations. Russia says, "Give us the fortress belt and we stop shooting." Ukraine says, "If we give you that, we lose the war." To understand why this specific patch of land is worth more than 1,000 treaties, we have to zoom in on the map. We have to look at what exactly this fortress belt is and why it has become the graveyard diplomacy. When you hear fortifications, you might think of a simple trench line or a few bunkers. But the Ukrainian fortress belt is something entirely different. It is a massive, integrated defensive agglomeration that has been under construction not just since 2022, but since 2014. The belt consists of 4 key cities: Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkivka, and Kashintanivka. These aren't just towns on a map. They are industrial titans. Over the last decade, Ukrainian engineers have turned their factories, basements, and Soviet-era infrastructure into a single, interlocking web of defense. It's a deep defense system. Sloviansk and Kramatorsk are the northern anchors. They are protected by the natural barrier of the Siversky Donetsk River and high ground that allows Ukrainian artillery to dominate the surrounding lowlands. The hollow logistics. Beneath these cities lies a network of tunnels and reinforced basements designed to withstand heavy bombardment. This allows Ukraine to move supplies, treat the wounded, and rotate troops without being seen by Russian drones. The dragon's teeth. Between the cities, the fields are sown with millions of mines and rows of concrete pyramids known as dragon's teeth, forcing Russian tanks into kill zones where they are vulnerable to anti-tank missiles. By late 2025, this belt is the single most fortified location on Earth. It is stronger than the Maginot Line because it is active. It is a living, breathing military machine. It is the logistical heart of the entire Ukrainian Eastern Front. If you control Kramatorsk, you control the rails. If you control the rails, you control the flow of ammo and food to tens of thousands of soldiers. This web of concrete is why the Russian advance has slowed to a crawl. They have thrown waves of infantry and armor at the outskirts. But cracking the main fortress belt by force will require a level of destruction we haven't even seen yet. And that brings us to the Russian strategy. Why is the Kremlin demanding Ukraine withdraw from this belt as a condition for peace? Why not just try to take it? The answer is cold, hard math. By December 2025, the Russian military has learned a bloody lesson from the battles of Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Taking those cities took months of meat grinder, assaults, and cost tens of thousands of Russian lives. And those were smaller and less fortified than the giants of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Russian generals know that a direct military assault on the fortress belt could take another 2 years and deplete their remaining reserves of armored vehicles. They are running low on Soviet-era tank stocks, and their economy is overheating. They physically cannot afford the cost of taking the fortress belt by force. So, Putin is trying to win it at the negotiating table. This is a classic salami-slicing tactic. By demanding withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the administrative borders of the Donetsk region, Russia is asking Ukraine to voluntarily hand over the very fortifications that Russia cannot defeat on the battlefield. It is a brilliant, cynical move. If Ukraine agrees, Russia gets a prize without losing a single soldier. They get the political victory of liberating the entire Donbas, which has been Putin's stated goal since the beginning. It allows him to declare Victory Day in Moscow and tell his people the special military operation is complete. But there's a darker reason Russia wants these cities intact. They don't just want the land. They want the infrastructure. Kramatorsk is a machine-building hub. If Russia captures it without flattening it with artillery, they inherit a functional industrial base to repair their own tanks and prepare for the next war. Now, let's look at this from the perspective of a Ukrainian command bunker. Why is President Zelenskyy refusing to budge, even under immense pressure from Western allies to freeze the conflict? Because the fortress belt is the cork in the bottle. If you look at a topographical map of Ukraine, you will see a terrifying reality west of Kramatorsk. Once you pass this belt of cities, the terrain changes dramatically. The hills disappear. The rivers become smaller. The urban density vanishes. West of the fortress belt lies the open steppe. This is flat, open tank country that stretches for nearly 80 kilometers until you hit the Dnipro River. If Ukraine hands over the fortress belt, they are effectively opening the front door to central Ukraine. There are no natural defensive lines behind Kramatorsk. If the Russian army is allowed to occupy these fortress cities as part of a peace deal, they will use them as a staging ground. They will rest, rearm, and stockpile ammunition inside the very bunkers Ukraine built. Then, in 1 year or 5 years, they could launch a high-speed mechanized offensive across the flat plains toward the city of Dnipro and Zaporizhia. Giving up the fortress belt means giving up strategic security for the rest of the country. It also means abandoning hundreds of thousands of civilians who lived under the Ukrainian flag for the entire war. The morale blow to Ukrainian army, retreating from strongholds they spent a decade building without firing a shot, would be devastating. It would feel like a betrayal of every soldier who died defending the approaches to these cities. So, here we stand in December 2025. The snow is falling on the trenches, and the diplomats are shivering in their suits. The war has mutated into a singular contest for this specific line on the map. Russia will not sign a peace deal unless it controls the fortress belt, because they need a guaranteed win and a secure border. Ukraine will not sign a peace deal that gives it up, because it guarantees their future destruction. This is why the fighting around Pokrovsk, the southern gateway to this belt, has been so desperate this winter. It is why the skies above the Donbas are thick with drones. Both sides know that whoever holds the keys to the fortress belt holds the keys to the future of Eastern Europe. Until a solution is found for these four cities, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkivka, and Kashtanivka, the guns will not fall silent. The fortress belt has become more than just concrete and steel. It is a physical manifestation of the war's unresolvable questions. As we watch the news in the coming weeks, keep your eyes on these names. They are not just dots on a map. They are the shield of Europe, and the hinge upon which the history of the next century is currently turning.